What's up, guys? My name is Side, and I'm a principal engineer. And if you want to get ahead of the majority of the engineering competition, this is for you. When I was in school, I was hyperfixating on things like grades and what I was taking away in college, and if that would be enough to help me get an engineering job. But ultimately, that's only one piece of the puzzle. The truth is, you can really set yourself apart outside of school, outside of the things that you pick up in the classroom. So I'm going to break this video up into 5 different categories. So the first thing I want to talk about is building your soft skills outside of the classroom. This is kind of going to be a foundation of all the other categories, but the point I wanted to hammer here is that when you're in school, when you're in college, you are learning how to learn. That's essentially what classes are focused around. You will learn circuit design. You will learn how to perform experiments in the lab. But at the end of the day, that's not necessarily the same thing as being in the industry. Focus on your soft skills, like being a well-rounded human being, developing a strong routine and time management skills, and that will give you a pretty good foundation to be a well-rounded, well-developed engineer. And so now that goes on my second point, and this is probably the most important one, and it's to think in systems. Oftentimes, when you are going into an engineering field, you are part of something bigger. You hear this a lot in your classes, but actually seeing it in practice is a very different thing. It's all about the bigger picture. For example, let's take an aircraft company. The bigger picture is building a plane. You're only a small piece of that puzzle there. That's not to say that your piece is insignificant. It's very important. But what really matters is how well your subsystem plays with all the other subsystems to develop one cohesive, comprehensive system. Understanding what sort of questions to ask to be a part of the bigger picture, to play nice with all these other fields, that will get you a lot further in your career. You'll also find that in your interviews, you're able to bounce off of your interviewer a lot better if you actually take the time to understand where you fit in. Remember, an interview is a two-way street. They'll ask you questions about your background to see if you're a good fit, and you'll ask them questions on where their needs are, and then you'll be able to showcase your value as to how you can solve those needs. On a project, you ought to think about integration, you ought to think about interfaces, and you ought to think about the real-world applications of the end goal. This is what ultimately sets apart junior entry-level engineers from the senior engineers. If you can walk into a job with systems thinking in your back pocket, you're going to come in ahead of everyone else. Now, the third thing is to communicate like a professional. When you are an engineer, you have to give the stakeholders confidence that you've done everything in your power to make a good design. And you need to be able to showcase that. You need to be able to walk them through your entire methodology, your entire thought process. It's one thing to know what you're doing, but it's another thing to be able to explain what you're doing. Explain what you're doing demonstrates a lot more depth of your field. And that is what people are looking for in their engineers. That is ultimately the role of an engineer, is to be opinionated, is to provide your engineering judgment to give the end customer and all the stakeholders confidence in what you're doing. And now the fourth category, network. It's easier than ever now. They say that you become more like the people you associate with, right? What's that phrase? Your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth, something like that. By building relationships with professionals in the industry, by learning what professionals are doing, by talking with people in the industry, you're able to have meaningful conversations that will help you assimilate ultimately. So try and get involved. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile already, make one. It's as simple as that. Make a LinkedIn profile and just go follow people you find interesting. And so that ties into my final point here, seeking mentorship. Mentorship is critical to removing roadblocks because you can learn from the mistakes that someone else made. You can learn from the successes that someone else went through. And if they're willing to share their journey with you, that is big. That is very helpful. One thing I wish I did as a younger engineer was focus more on finding mentorship. The more you invest in a mentor, the more they'll invest in you. And when you have a good relationship with a mentor, that is going to help you get ahead. So at the end of the day, if you apply these 5 things, you're going to be ahead of a lot of the other people that are applying, that are your competition. Most students will wait until the end of college to develop all these skills. And that's okay. There's no timeline in things. But if you do want to get ahead quicker, try and focus on these things. And if you're serious about hitting the ground running, this is exactly what I'll be teaching in my Elite Engineer Blueprint. This is my one-on-one program where I'll help engineers or aspirant engineers develop the mindset, the mentality, and skills ultimately needed to accelerate their careers. You can join the waitlist now at the link below, and you'll be first in line for when enrollment starts. All right, that's it for this video, guys. If you got something from this video, please hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe if you'd like to see more.